Well, good morning. My name is George Wickstrom, and I'm going to be visiting with you this morning about inflation. But before I get started, I don't know that everybody's going to agree with what I have to say. And if you do, or if you have any questions about what we are talking about, I'm more than happy to meet with anybody. I'm going to give you my phone number now, and at the end of my discussion, I'm going to give it to you again. It's 507-323-5239. And if I don't answer, I do not do well with texts. Leave a voicemail. I should be able to get back to you. So, okay. Now, what about inflation? What is inflation? Well, first of all, inflation is an increase in the supply of money relative to the amount of goods and services available. Now, what causes inflation? It could be many things, anything that causes that event. It could be government doing things. It could be the president doing things that spend money that we don't have. And the only way the federal government can pay its bills if it doesn't have money is that it can either do one of two things. It can sell bonds, which increase debt, which increase interest, which increases more supply for money, or it could sell print money. That goes in through the banking system, Federal Reserve and Treasury and so forth. But it could be government caused. So, or it could be as a really bizarre event, supposing a large entity saved money for a long, long time and put a lot of money into the market all at once. That could be inflation. So that's enough on that. Okay, now, is there any way, can we control inflation? Under some circumstances, we can. And can we control inflation now? Let's talk about that. First of all, we have to go all the way back to 1946. Why? Because in 1946, World War II was over. Actually, it was over in September of 45. And in 1946, we were back into getting back into peacetime production. And the United States is the only country left not damaged by the war. Every other country, Europe, China, Soviet Union, Japan, North Africa, all were damaged heavily by the war. And so the United States was the only kid on the block that could make anything of significance. So we had the world for a market. Our debt to the gross domestic product, and I want to make a point on this, because the debt to gross domestic product can vary widely. The debt at the end of World War II, 1946, was 118% to the gross domestic product. We drove that down to 1974 to 31%. But guess what? The debt was higher in 74 than it was in 46. How could that be? Well, the gross domestic product went up through the roof, or a very, very, very sharp curve. The debt went up at a much slower rate, but it went up. And the only administration that I'm aware of in which the debt did not increase was the Clinton administration. They didn't increase the debt, as far as I know. So that's a little history on the debt and so forth. Now, what has happened over the years to cause the amount of inflation that we have today? Well, from my opinion, here's what went wrong. We had a lot of things put in place. For example, in 1948, we put in what was the Clean Water Act. What was that? That was putting in sewer and water systems in a lot of small towns all over the country. And because back in those days, we're in a transition between outhouses and septic tanks and so forth. And those things now many were put in about 60, 70 years ago. Some of them are failing now. We had one down in Medford about a couple of years ago, in which they didn't have $51,000 to repair their sewage system. So they dumped 38,000 gallons of raw sewage into the Straight River, which goes into the Cannon River, which flows all the way into the Mississippi. So those things have to be repaired and replaced. Now, why am I making a point of that? Because we didn't set aside any money for the sewer and water systems to repair them. It was all going to come out of current income. So if the current income wasn't there, you either go to debt or you don't fix it. What else did we do? Under Eisenhower, we put in 41,000 miles of highway, freeways, most of them, I believe, because Eisenhower was very much impressed with the Autobahn in Germany. Now, another thing that we did or didn't do is we have 36% of our bridges in the country, that's bridges of all kinds, need to be either replaced or repaired. We didn't set aside any money for those, and there's a need. We go into other programs, for example, social programs. Social Security was founded under President Franklin Roosevelt in 1935. Okay, in 1935, they deemed to be retirement age deemed to be age 65. A 65-year-old in 1935 had a 6 to 8 or 9 year life expectancy. Today, we moved that up to age 67, but a 67-year-old today has about a 17-year or 18-year life expectancy. Now, what's the problem with that? We have increased our life expectancy through various health programs and so forth, but we haven't increased or the retirement age enough to offset that increase in life expectancy. So we're underfunded in Social Security, like we are in roads and bridges and so forth and so on. It also happened with Medicare and Medicaid. We're not doing things that will keep the cost of running those programs up to speed based on life expectancy and people's health. So all of those things, why am I concerned about those things? Because they develop what we call unfunded liabilities. It's no different than a person that has a house and he buys the house, brand new house, and goes on through life, doesn't pay attention to any of the things that are wearing out. And after 20 or 30 years, the water heater, the furnace or the boiler, the air conditioning, the roof, all those things are coming to need repair and replacement. If you don't have any money to do it, you've got to go into debt to do it. So people that are thoughtful will set aside funds for that. Well, the federal government, from my understanding, has set aside very little, if any, money to do those things. So we've got total unpayable, unfunded liabilities. Now, what are the unfunded liabilities for Social Security alone? It's $73 trillion. That's double our national debt. Our national debt is $36 trillion. Now, here's another thing about our national debt. Our gross domestic product, the fiscal year for the federal government ends on September 30th of every year. So on September 30th of 1974, the federal government got income taxes from various sources, businesses, people, and so forth, of just under $5 trillion. The expenses that they had to pay that they needed to pay were $6.8 trillion. So we went into debt about $1.8 trillion. So we have to print money, or we have to sell bonds to pay our debt. Selling bonds, again, as I said earlier, is debt. Printing money is inflation. So those are the things that we're up against right now. I don't know what the total unfunded liabilities are, but they have to be way, way, way in excess of $100 trillion and growing. We have no way, from my understanding, to pay down any of that because it's beyond the ability of the economy to support that. Another thing we've done in our economy is we've drifted away from living what I consider to be a sustainable lifestyle. We have 40% of our gross domestic product is about wants. What are the wants? Well, it's our new cars, it's snowmobiles, it's boats, it's cruises, all those kinds of things that we are nice to do, but that it's too much. 40% of our gross domestic product makes us non-competitive in the world market because that has to be paid for somehow out of our economy. So all those things we're facing right now. So my question is, what can we do about the unfunded liabilities and our debt? Can we pay it down? I don't see any place that we have the fiscal ability to do that. Now, if people understand this, the things that we have to do on our personal lives is live within our incomes. If we don't do that, we're asking for trouble. When I was in financial services for over 47 years, and I talked with lots of people. Some people that had enough income to be financially stable, but they spent too much money on things that they felt they needed to do for one reason or another, their ego or whatever. And what happens then is that you don't have any reserves to fall back on. And if a person loses a job or has some kind of unexpected event that causes some more money, they're in trouble. When I talk about people managing money, I talk about offense and defense. And when we talk about offensive assets, we're talking about stocks, bonds, investments, mutual funds, land, all those kinds of things that you can invest in for various reasons. But the other side of it is what are safe investments or defensive investments? Cash in the bank, annuities, and cash value life insurance. Those are about the main three things. Now, let's compare that to a football team. How many football teams don't pay any attention to their defense? They pay as much. I'm not a football fan. I don't watch much of it, but I've seen notations that they're paying defensive people in football world of $30 to $40 million a year. And maybe some are more than that. I don't know. But they pay a lot of attention to good defensive people. And that we have to also in our own lives. As we get older, we need to be more interested in the defensive side of things. And if we don't, we can find ourselves in trouble if the market falls out of bed. Let's take a look at what happened in 2006, 7, and 8, and 9. Okay, I'll tell you a true story. When I was with the company in the insurance business, we could talk with any of the top execs. And if they had time, they would talk with us as agents out in the field. I got acquainted with one of the top executive that managed our general account. And we felt that the economy was going to fall out of bed in 2002. Well, it didn't, but we stayed in touch, and I talked over the phone with him any number of times, saw him at annual meetings and so forth. In 2006, he was on the stage with another man. The other man was Claire Zempel. Claire Zempel was a man that was the chief investment officer for Robert W. Baird. And when we sold Robert W. Baird in 1998 and bought Frank Russell Company in 1998. Well, Claire Zempel came on board as our chief financial officer, and he and Mark Dahl, the man I was talking with, were on the stage at the annual meeting in front of about 18,000 people in 2006. And Claire Semple had charts and graphs and all things were just great. And I'm thinking, I don't see it that way. I see people buying mortgages, don't even know what a balloon mortgage is, and they come due and they don't have any money. I had one person that I was talking with, a medical person that was into a balloon mortgage, 5-year balloon mortgage, a year and a half into it, and didn't know what it was all about. He didn't believe what I was telling him, so I just forget about it. He lost his job. No, he didn't lose his job. He lost his house because he didn't have any money, and his income was $140,000 in the 1980s. That was a good income back then. It's not a bad income today. But he lost it because so a lot of those things that were in these products that we were concerned about were of that nature. And as a result, I didn't think much of what Claire Zempler was saying. Mark Dahl gets up in front of the group and he says, I hear what you're saying, but I have an entirely different point of view. Claire Zempler is on the back of the stage and he's rude. You just don't do that as a professional person. You just listen and keep your mouth shut. But he didn't do that. Anyway, nothing happened. Since 2007, the same dog and pony show. Guess what? Claire Zempel is gone because the market falls out of bed starting in October of 2007. The bottom is 2009, March of 2009. The market lost over half its value. Claire Zempel is gone, like I said. Claire Zempel is gone. Mark Dahl stays in retirement. So those are the kinds of things that happen if people don't know have good information, and those kinds of things you have to be watching. And one of the problems that this country has is that we have a lot of people that do not understand, and they are not informed on the critical things that we need to know about in our economy and in our political situation. We as a nation, we've drifted too much to the fun and games things, and we've neglected what is really important. Let me talk a little bit about another subject. That would be the climate. In my judgment, the biggest problem humanity has is climate, because the climate will control our lives. It'll have a huge impact on our economy, and if we don't manage our use of our materials and control the temperatures, what we're doing, we've got things that are affecting our economy right now that we don't pay any attention to. Let me give you a couple of examples. This is not the Colorado River. We knew 40 years ago that it could only sustain 60% of what we were using of it. 60%. Okay, now it's running out of water. Lake Mead, that feeds California, where they make vegetables and fruits, is down 150 feet. There's desert land in Arizona that's very fertile, but there's no water. They had irrigation from the Colorado River. The Colorado River is down. They're cutting back on the irrigation. What else? We have the Ogallala Aquifer that starts in Wyoming, goes to South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, and one other state I can't remember. But I read in 2012, the water was half gone. It was going to be out in 20 to 25 years. Okay, well, right now, as I'm talking, there's irrigation that's running out of water in the Ogallala Aquifer. What does that do? Well, that means we don't have enough water for the crops, and that means that there's fewer crops. That's fewer products. That means the price of products are going to go up. That's going to be that is dropping the amount of goods and services available, food, and relative to the amount of money. So all those things are going on in our economy, and we as humans need to understand that and vote for people that understand that. Let me go back now to the economy. In 2017, we dropped the taxes on corporations from 35% down to 21%. Okay, what does that do? Well, that makes it that those corporations make them more competitive. They've got less expenses and taxes. What does that do to the federal government? Well, it reduces the amount of taxes the federal government gets, so they have to print more money or sell more bonds. Now, does that affect the economy right away? No, that was done under the administration that was put in force between 2016 and 2020. But that phased in over time. And this is also what happens when we phase in things like Social Security. It doesn't happen like that. It happens over time. It gradually phases in. So what I see happening is over all the things we're doing that I mentioned, I see these things phasing in, and our debt becomes bigger and bigger, and the inflation gets bigger and bigger, and the debt gets bigger and bigger. And at some point, it fails. My guess is it's going to happen in about 10 years. I don't know that. There's no way I can tell you. Nobody knows for sure. But the point is, we have to, people that understand that, you need to manage your own finances, stay out of debt, don't buy depreciating assets, and live within your income and get a sinking fund. Okay, well, that pretty much sums up what I want to say. But just as a review, the federal government has been responsible for, in my judgment, a big part of the inflation and cost of living, and the programs that they've done are beyond what we can do anything to stop. I'll give you an example of my own family. When I was about 8, 9 years old, my mother would send me to this bakery to get a loaf of bread. Go to Eckert's Bakery, Georgie, and get a loaf of bread. Okay, I go to the bakery. The lady would take it out of the showcase, slice it, put it into a bag. I gave her a dime. That same bread today is $3.50, $4. And my dad bought a brand new Chevy in 1947. Paid $1,585 for it. Now that car had everything on it that you could have at that time. Nothing like what we have today. But the difference between those cars then, there was a lot more manual labor. The technology was not there to the degree it is today. The cars today, just like bread, is done with a lot of machines and technology. But the point is that all of those things have changed, and the cost has gone up, mainly, in my judgment, because of government programs. And the only thing we can do to offset is understand that and be sure we've got a sinking fund. See, the problem that we have with cash is cash doesn't keep up with inflation. But on the other hand, if you have a stock portfolio and it completely falls out of bed, you're between a rock and a hard place. Now there are some products, some of the what I call defensive assets. When you're dealing with insurance, let me just say a few things. I was a salesman, and people expect to have a salesman say, I got the best deal. Well, guess what? We don't all have the best deal. We don't sell that way. what we do is we find out what the prospect is concerned about, what their experiences are, and so forth. We help them understand. Now, I have an insurance policy that I bought when I was 36 years old. I'm 95 now. I put $21,000 into that policy. It's got $180,000 of cash value. All companies aren't the same. There are stock companies which they pay dividends to stockholders. There are mutual companies that pay dividends to policy owners. But what I would advise anybody that is buying into what I'm saying, understand that all insurance companies are not the same. There are 3 rating services that I would advise everybody to understand and get the rating on the policy to get a good value. The top 10 companies are worth considering, but there's only 2 companies, and I'm not going to name any companies because this is not for that at all. Get ratings on your insurance companies. That rating tells you the ability of that company to pay its bills. There are stock companies that have good ratings for that. But the problem with stock companies is the dividends go to the stockholders. Always consider a mutual company. Those are some things that you can consider. If your agent he doesn't have to be with the top company. If he's giving you good advice and helping you get into the right kinds of investments, and the right balance of the securities that are out there, you're fortunate because we aren't all that way, and so forth. But that's enough of my discussion for one day. My name is George Wickstrom Jr. My telephone number is 507-323-5239. I'd love to talk to anybody that would like that has some comments or less more discussion of what we're all about. I would buy a lunch, buy a coffee. If there's a group of people that want to talk, that's fine also, because the more people that understand where we are, the better off families are going to be. It's tragic when people lose their money and can't pay their bills. You don't sleep good at night. So anyway, thank you for listening, and take care.